everyone. Thank you for tuning in to my YouTube channel. Today's guest is Mr. Henry Charlot. He is a CPA, and today I hope he will share with us and with me his CPA journey, what he's learned along the way, and what he's doing right now in his career as an accountant.
So, thanks for having me, Jackie.
Thank you for agreeing to do this interview. I really appreciate it. So we're going to start out with, what is your current age?
Okay, I am 60 years old.
No, you do not look 60 years old. Not at all.
Thank you very much.
I don't believe it. I need to see your ID. Okay. What age and year did you become a licensed CPA?
I got my license in January 1985, right before my 28th birthday. So I think you said you were in kindergarten at that time.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Elementary school, baby.
I'm certified for some time now.
Really? Was it initially in Georgia?
No, I'm licensed in the state of Texas. I moved to Houston. My first job out of college. I went to work for Ernst & Young in the Houston office. I'm a native of New Orleans. So I moved to Houston. Stayed there for about almost 3 years, and started taking the tests while working for that CPA firm.
Okay.
And so I just finished out my certification in licensing in Texas.
Gotcha. So you initially licensed there. Do you remember your license number?
You know, when you posed that question, I said, well, I'm gonna have to look that up, and then it was burned on my memory. It's 36939. I didn't even have to.
You know, most CPAs remember it. They'll never forget it.
It's burned on my memory. So, okay, yeah, well, that's what it is.
Okay, great. So what college or university did you attend?
Xavier University. Got my bachelor's degree.
That's New Orleans, right?
Yes. And Tulane University, also in New Orleans. I got my MBA in Tulane.
Awesome. And
just a little about Xavier, historically black university. Great school. I loved it. And I think one of the good things about it, part of my experience, is that a lot of my contemporaries at the time were taking the test as well. So I guess maybe we'll talk about that a little more as we go forward. But Xavier, I don't know if it's a published statistic, but it was kind of known at that time that Xavier had put most of the black CPAs in the state got there at that time. Had gotten their degrees from Xavier. I'm not sure if that's still true, but at the time it was true.
The strong accounting program.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. The business curriculums as a whole was the largest department at Xavier, even though it's known really for its medical school, its pharmacy school, business, and business-related curriculums was still the largest department. So we had a lot of history with helping people to become certified at Xavier.
Gotcha. Okay. What was your undergrad major and degree and other degrees you have since graduate level otherwise?
Yeah, well, both my degrees are in business, and I minored in accounting at Xavier. Minored in accounting and economics, and I minored in accounting and finance at Tulane for my MBA degree.
Yeah.
So with both of those combined, I had all of the requirements, all of the specific accounting courses that were required for me to sit for the exam.
Did you know that going in? Were you already?
I planned it that way. Kind of, sort of. Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Okay, let's expound upon that. Did you have some guidance, or was there somebody in your family that was an accountant, or did it just kind of pan out after you got in there and you started planning, or how?
Well, again, a lot of my friends, a lot of my contemporaries at school. Interestingly, my older sister was an accountant at the time, but she was still studying for her degree. You know, she's several years older than me, but so she hadn't completed her degree yet, and hadn't sat for the exam or anything of that nature. So later on, I think after I'd gotten out of Xavier and into and actually probably even after I finished Tulane, we would talk a lot because I went directly into accounting, so we would talk a lot about it then. But I think I had, again, a lot of my friends, my contemporaries at Xavier were studying. I went directly to work for a CPA firm, and of course they really want you to go on and get that certification done. So a lot of my coworkers were sitting and studying. Exactly, absolutely. It was a big deal for them when they went out and talked to their companies to try to get business. And the big CPA firms, they would always try to say who was the biggest by certain measures.
Okay.
And they were, at the time, they would measure, well, who has the most Fortune 1000 companies, who has the most Fortune 500s. And Ernst & Young at the time, one of their selling points is that we have more of our total staff. We have the highest percentage of CPAs. So they really push you right away. Yeah. Sit at your very first opportunity, and you sit and you take it until you get done. So there was a lot of basically the people that I'm working with, and then my friends from college, all at that time, very early in our careers, a lot of people were doing it. Yeah.
Do you think you had a strong support system in the workplace?
Oh yeah.
They pushed it. They
absolutely.
Support you while
they
pushing.
did. They did. Absolutely. They would. I think they paid your test fees first time out. They would also, interestingly, in Houston, we would have to drive to Austin, Texas, to take the test. So they would pay for your hotel stay the first time. So they would go full freight for you to as a way to encourage you. So yeah, big support structure for it. And again, it's I guess common discussion every day among everybody else at the firm who hadn't gotten it yet. Oh, how you doing? How's the studying going? How many parts have you passed? Exactly. Yeah.
Did you find that intimidating and stressful with that conversation daily going on around you, or did it motivate you?
I think it was more of a motivator because you knew that your counterparts were going through the same thing as you. So you could compare notes, and you had, say, maybe recent colleagues who maybe only recently had passed or had passed parts and were still trying to complete. So everybody was giving you tips and suggestions on how to go about it.
Okay. We'll move the conversation along. So do you work in corporate, government, public accounting, entrepreneur, or the academic environment?
You know, at some point I've done all.
Really?
Yes.
Well, touch on all
so
of them.
I'm in government now. Again, my first job out of college was in public accounting. So I was an auditor.
Right, at EY.
Yes. I worked. My second job, I went to work at Xavier University, at my alma mater, in economic development, but primarily working with small businesses. So coming from an accounting background, it really helped me to do a lot of work with small businesses early on in my career. And accounting and really understanding the financial side of a business, that's always a big need for business. Of course, everybody's seeking out financing when they want to start a business. So you really have to be able to present your information and really know your numbers in order to be able to qualify for business loans. So we did a lot of training and technical assistance with businesses. In some cases, we would bring accountants in to actually work one-on-one with the small business. We tested out a lot of the early PC-based accounting systems to see which of those would work well for small businesses, and then the training courses on those. So, yeah, and I've worked with a number of small businesses. I've owned a few, along with my father, and some of my own. So, yeah, I've done a lot of it, and I've worked with a lot of public sector companies as well.
Gotcha. Okay. So, what area of accounting do you specialize in?
Well, I started in auditing, so of course that's a lot of financial statement reporting, but it touches a lot of other areas as well, certainly the tax area as well. And over time, I've done a lot with, say, statement analysis, having done some things with business loan programs. It really focuses a whole lot more on the interpretation of your financial results, more so than just the compilation and reporting of your data. So I guess that's probably more in the area of maybe managerial accounting, so accounting for decision making.
Okay.
And interestingly, I've met a number of bankers and other financial type professionals that they are so conversant with financial statements that you would think that they were certified. But again, they just by necessity have to really get behind the numbers to really make a decision about whether or not somebody is a good financial risk. So having that background was really helpful to me in some of the things that I want to do later in my career.
Okay, well, now that we have your background set, we're going to move into maybe thinking back to when you were studying and talking about the actual exam, the CPA exam. Do you remember, can you talk about what review course did you use and why, and how did that decision would play into price, reputation, things like that?
I used the Gleim CPA review manuals. They were big, gigantic books about this thick. Nothing was computerized at that time. So it was all paper and pencil.
So remind us, what year was this? Or
this was,
right?
Well, let's see. I guess I first sat in 1981, and I was certified in 1985. So there was nothing computer based at the time. You could go take a physical course.
Okay.
So if you wanted to take, say, a month-long course, maybe evenings and weekends, you could do that. There were some quick review courses, like right leading up to tests, just like a weekend review. And again, in talking with people who had, say, recently passed or still trying to pass, and at this point I hadn't really sat yet. So again, everybody was talking about it. And some people say, well, that weekend review, that's not going to do you a lot of good if you haven't really put in the time to study. So, frankly, a lot of people recommend that before you decide to, say, take a paid course, do it the old-fashioned way, just like you had to do in school. You had to get in the book, you had to work problems, you had to read, you had to understand the theory behind it, you had to work problems out. So it's like, well, all right, I'm going to take that advice. And even some of the senior executives in the firm, one of them would make the point is that, well, it really is an academic test. It's a book test. So it's better to take it as soon as possible after college. In fact, it was frowned upon if for some reason you did not take it early on.
Really?
Yeah. So because again, it's going to be easier for you to pass the closer you are to coming out of college, because maybe you have good study habits.
Right.
Yeah, before you start getting distracted with
life.
Yeah, exactly. All of the things that a young adult can get distracted with.
Yeah. Relationships, working hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Long hours, children, parents, brothers and sisters.
Yes. So take it as soon as you can and try to pass it, and then you have that credential and you can just move forward.
Gotcha. Okay. So you said, I think you first sat in 1981.
Yes.
So you would say maybe a 4-year process, your CPA journey?
Yes. I took the test a total of 7 times to pass the 4 parts. It was organized in 4 parts at that time. Audit, law, theory, and practice. And I passed, out of the gate, my very first time, I passed audit and law.
Wow.
So that was good. Yeah, I mean, you get 2 of them under your belt, you get some familiarity with the test, you get to see what the other test components or the other sections look like. And you get a little confidence. Yeah, you get a little confidence. And of course, on the job, they look good. Well, all right, okay, well, you got 2 now. Let's just keep on going.
Right.
So none of it is really easy, but if you were looking at the 4 parts, I think the organization is a little different now. But those were among the easier of the 2, because those were the non-quantitative sections of the test. The practice is the quantitative section. So again, getting those out of the way, and then so for your future studies, then you can focus in on those other parts.
Did you find any section particularly difficult?
It was generally conceded that practice was the toughest part, because it was all problems. Different. There was practice 1 and practice 2, but it still counted as one section. And so a lot of it, say multiple choice, but you had to do your calculations, of course, to get to the answer.
And then heavy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And then other parts, full blown problems that you might have to do. I'm going to really tell my age. At the time, for one of the times I sat for practice, we had to do what was called the statement of changes in financial position. So it's so old now, it's no longer even referred to that. It's basically it's the statement of cash flows now. So that statement has evolved over time. But you might have to do a full-blown analysis or a statement based on data that they provided. So again, very heavy calculation.
Gosh, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I have things have changed.
Yes,
but only on the computer though. It's still very difficult, I would say.
I would bet. Yeah.
So you said you took this various sections a total of 7 times before passing out 4 parts. Did you change anything with your study habits or resources to understand the concepts better during your retakes?
Well, I stayed with the review manuals because at the time they were relatively expensive. The whole set might have cost slightly in excess of $100. And they didn't change substantially over a period of a few years. You could still work with the same manual. And again, maybe if you had a 10%, that was probably a big difference in the material. So it probably was even less than that. So once you bought the manuals, and again, I'd had success with it, so I pretty much stayed with that method to stay prepared or to get prepared.
And not to tell your age or say, but just to talk about the history of the program and how the exam has evolved. When you took it, was that when it was only offered twice a year?
Yes, twice a year. And the thing I talk about a lot, this probably sounds so funny now, but it was all paper and pencil. We couldn't even use a calculator.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we had to figure out.
I never knew that part.
Paper and pencil on old work papers. You probably can't even find the work papers, the long column of pads, either a 4-column or a 13-column sheet. And you sat there and you made a whole worksheet. Excel, all these things didn't even exist then. So
true accounting, right there.
Exactly. So, but I guess the kind of a funny story. You ask about people that give you advice and kind of motivate you. My very best friend, he had passed. I think Eric Meyer was one of those few people that passed all 4 parts right away. So he was coming out of my graduating class. He got certified really early.
Very sharp.
So I was still studying and all and going through it, and he just he stopped by one day and I was studying. He saw me work, and then again by this time I was working on the practice to try to pass that part. So he saw me working out a problem. And he said, "You're never gonna pass. He said, it's taking you too long." He said, "You might have 20 minutes to do that problem." So it's like, well, all right, well, that's one thing that I have to work on. So at the time, my family was in the restaurant business, so I would work in a restaurant. And what I did, just to sharpen my just basic mathematical skills, rather than using the cash register, I'd do it all in my head.
Gotcha.
So I might add up a ticket of, 5-10 items on the ticket, just add it all up and then run it on the cash register just to make sure it was right. So as I was working, I was still preparing. Even in my non-study time, I was working. So I always find that to be it was an interesting part of my experience that I talk about.
Good tip.
Yeah. So it's like, well, you got to get fast. You have to know your information, but you can't lose time on that basic mechanical part.
So it's still time too.
Oh yeah. But you need to spend your time, say maybe getting to the essence of the problem rather than to, again, my friend, he said, don't spend that much time on the arithmetic. You got to spend your time really thinking about what the problem is. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So during this time, did anything unexpected come up, like in life occurrences that could have derailed you, or maybe did derail you for a moment? But it sounds like you finished pretty quickly going through it in 4 years. Was anything you want to share?
Well, nothing major.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did. I only stayed in Texas about 2 years, sort of changing job, changed back in location. I moved back from Texas back to New Orleans. So changing job probably more than anything. But yeah, it wasn't a major thing.
Was that
so?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I didn't really let it derail me. Again, even I was no longer working in public accounting, I still wanted to go forward and complete the exam and complete the certification.
Had you passed any part during that transition?
Well,
the relocation?
Let's see. Passed audit and law first out.
Right, okay, so you were able to transfer those credits?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I continued on in Texas, and By the time I passed my fourth part, I was actually able to take it in Louisiana, but still complete the certification in Texas. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have been kind of a nightmare at the time to switch the certification back to Louisiana. So I stayed with Texas the whole way through.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
So I was fortunate that there was nothing major that really prevented me from doing it.
Gotcha. You may have touched on this, but was there a review course price or major or minor sacrifice, and was it covered by your employer or school?
Not the school. I don't recall if my employer would help on the actual review course, but again, I'd had success with using the manuals. So again, after having some early success with that, and still being, I guess, relatively new out of college and accustomed to just having to sit down and study in a real disciplined type fashion, I stayed with the review manual. So the cost of the review course, I don't remember the exact amount, but it wasn't exorbitant. But again, I'd had success with the manuals, and so I continued with that.
Yeah. You said they were under $100 back then,
around 100, yeah, for the actual review manuals. And now that I think about it, I guess to actually take a course over a period of months probably would have been 300. So still, neither was not an insurmountable amount of money to do frankly, for what you get from it, from the reward, right?
What about the test fees? Was that, do you recall the amount, or do you think that could have been a major sacrifice at
It was not at the time, no. It was not. Again, because I was working. I think most people at that point probably are working. And it's an investment in your future. And I'm not sure what the costs are now, but it was not a big part, no. It wasn't.
And right now it's between either $250 to $300, depending on what state you're in and what section you're on.
All right.
I guess the average around $275 per section.
Still not bad. Yeah, it's well worth it.
Well, depending on how many times you have to take each section.
Yeah.
If you can study and get it done.
Sooner is better. Sooner is definitely better. Yes.
So, do you have any study tips or advice you can pass along to a CPA candidate today in 2017?
I'd say build in enough time. It's a lot of material, so you can't. Don't think you can cram. Accounting is not a crammable type subject.
You gotta know it. You gotta work
really,
it.
Exactly, and you build from a foundation. So again, if we were taking the test, I think we would sit 2 test times. I think we're probably April, maybe March, April, or then again late October, November.
Okay.
So if you were going to sit for the October test, you were you'd start your studying in May. So again, it was kind of until you got finished. You weren't finished until you were finished. So if you think about it, if you sat in April, you would probably get your results in late May, so you'd know what you had to take, and you would immediately go back into study mode to start getting ready for the next test. And I think it's just regular consistency. You'd study a few nights a week, certainly some time on Saturday. And I remember some people, they would say, well, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'll study like 3 nights a week and then half day Saturday, and maybe I'll take Sunday off just to give yourself a break. Because you were still working, but if you start long enough, then you can just work your way through all of the sections, and because it takes time. So again, the biggest thing is building enough time to really be able to do it, because it's a lot of studying.
So you got to have some time management skills and sacrifice your social life.
Exactly.
Is that what I'm hearing? You got to sacrifice going out. The nightlife is gone.
A friend of mine, he had been working in the field for about 2 years longer than I had, and I think by the time I passed my first 2, he passed his last 2.
Okay.
And he found out in May that he had passed his last 2 in that either late March or April, and he was like, "Man, am I going to enjoy my summer?" That's what he thought. I guess he had spent the last 2 summers just doing his stuff. I'm like, I'm not gonna get to hang out by the pool and do barbecues. I'll be studying at night, but that's what it takes.
Was it worth the sacrifice? Did
Absolutely.
you actually do that, or were you still trying to?
Well, you're building a little bit of downtime.
Hang out with friends, or did
but you're building some downtime. But you would get into the routine where, okay, I'll do 2 hours a night, 3 to 4 nights a week, and maybe half day Saturday. Either review what you already done, or I'll start on your next section. And again, if you start in May to get ready for October, November, and then just do it methodically and systematically,
so it sounds like you need a study plan.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Schedule.
Yes. You
can't wait till
test date. Yeah, if you try to start a month before and just cover all of that.
So you would suggest having a 6-month schedule of different sections within those different parts.
Yeah, and just work your way through it methodically.
Help you stay on track and see where you're up until the test date.
Exactly, and then if you can get through everything and say your last few weeks leading up to it, that's your review time. You're going back, you're reviewing things you did 4 or 5 months ago, but if you're going through it in a very thorough, methodical kind of way, it's much easier to look back and just refresh your memory. So your days and your weeks leading up to the test, if you can review what you've already done, that really helps you to get prepared.
Okay. Really helps you to get prepared. Well, thank you on that. So we talked about your background and then the CPA exam itself and your journey. So let's talk about now your professional life and how you use the CPA exam in your career.
Sure.
So I know you are one of the more seasoned professionals who have a lot of experience under your belt. So thank you for being willing to share some of that with us today. So in your current position or over the years of your career, did you find that having a CPA credential was beneficial? Did employers value it?
Oh, yes.
And I'm asking that question to lead into, should young CPA or any CPA candidates, is it worthwhile? Is this sacrifice worth it? Once you get the 3 levels, what does it mean?
Just in terms of what you learn, to me it's a whole orientation in terms of how you even look at and analyze problems. It's just accounting teaches you to think a particular way, so to speak.
Okay.
And you know exactly what I mean. It's like when you see something happen. Yeah, it's like, well, how does that affect the income statement? How does that affect the balance sheet?
Right.
Probably nobody but an accountant would really think about things like that. But just really moving fast forward to what I'm doing now, basically working with businesses, and we're going out offering a program that helps to defray a company's cost of training. So my CPA expert, I can immediately connect with the business. I can show them the value of why they would want to work with workforce-related programs and other economic development programs as well. And businesses, they understand the bottom line. You can tell them, well, look, this is going to save you X number of dollars. It's going to save you this amount of time, which always translates into dollars as well. So again, working with businesses, and you know, accounting is the language of business. So anytime you're working with business, if you can have that type of grounding that you get from becoming certified, then you're always a few steps ahead. But the thing that kind of stood out to me, at the time I got certified, I was working at Xavier University, working with small businesses, working with various different federal economic development programs with banks, on special programs of that nature, working with small businesses. But the thing that used to, one of the things that really stands out is that, so let's just say I would work with a business on a business plan, full detailed financial projections, full ratio analysis, everything that the bank would want to see, several years worth of financials, all spread out. What are the numbers telling you? You project that off into the future. So basically our customers would always, they would be pretty happy with the Xavier University, you know, did a great job for me. And months later, they would find out that I was certified. Like, oh, Henry, you certified? It's like they immediately felt that what I got was worth that much more.
Okay.
And I even had one client said, my business plan was prepared by a CPA.
So stamp of approval, right? That was the stamp of approval. That's all we gotta say.
So, you know, people felt like they were getting a lot more, even if they were happy before. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. like they would go put that business plan down with pride. Say, my CPA did that for me.
Awesome.
So, Mr. Banker, what do you think about that? So, yeah, I always found that real interesting.
That's it. So at the time you were at Xavier, right?
Yes.
When you got certified, did you get an automatic salary increase?
Well, interestingly, I started at Xavier in January '85, and a few weeks later I got certified. So no, not right away. I didn't. Okay. Not right away. But I'm trying to recall. Frankly, I don't recall it being automatic, even with the CPA firm that I was with at the time.
Okay.
Now certainly, if you are certainly with a CPA firm, you could only go maybe 2 steps without having your certification. So it definitely had an impact on your salary and your promotability very early in your career, in your first 2 to 3 years. I think you could only you could take 2 steps. You would get hired in as a staff accountant. Ernst & Young at that time had the next step was what they called advanced staff. Other firms called it a junior accountant. And you could get to senior accountant, but even to make the case that you were ready to be a senior, they would like to see you be a CPA. And even if you got promoted to senior, you would not get promoted beyond that. And so this is, again, still your first maybe 2.5 years of your career. So my whole point in that is that relatively early in your career, it is going to have a big impact on your compensation and your promotability.
But it sounds like you would be promoted, and then the increase on the income may come later, but that would put you in line for a promotion by having that credential.
And by not having it, you pretty much, your advancement opportunities were limited and became non-existent at some point. Yes.
Okay.
So it may not have been right away, but in a relatively short period of time, yes, you would see an increase in compensation.
Okay. And given where you are right now, the position you have working with businesses and economic development and about training, getting businesses to understand, do you? I know you spoke about it a little bit, but do you think having a CPA credential should be required, or how it helps you? Could you do that job without a CPA credential?
You could, but again, I think I've not found, there's nothing that I've done in my career that has not been helped by my early CPA experience. I still use those skills every day. Again, it's an orientation to how you think about problems that you see in business. When we go out and talk with companies, we're oftentimes dealing with the chief financial officer or a human resources person, but oftentimes, or sometimes a CEO, depending on company size. So again, being able to explain the impact of using the programs on their businesses, it helps you make a better connection with that business very early on. And I think sometimes when you go in, those businesses think they're dealing with a seasoned business professional as well, that'll really understand bottom line impacts and will help implement programs for them that helps their business. So yeah, there's a lot of value to it.
So you think you can earn the respect that's there once you walk through the door by having
yes, exactly. The CFO will know I don't have to go back to accounting 101 with this guy, or if I ask a question about their form of organization and things like that, they immediately get why I need to know that. And it's like, well, I don't have to go through a long drawn out story. I can get right to it. They'll understand, and then we can just keep moving.
Gotcha. So, with that, in your current job, do you think you are compensated fairly or in line with industry standards, or you think by just having that CPA?
I've never said anything bad about ARC.
Did we even mention it to your current employer by name?
I would say because for what I do now, there are people from a variety of backgrounds that do workforce development, many with many years experience directly in workforce. So specifically within workforce, it may not have a direct impact, but in applying for the job and being able to make the case that I was the best candidate for the job and working with businesses, yes, I believe it made a difference.
Okay.
And on the interview team, the interview panel was the financial officer for my division. So, we were able to kind of connect on a certain level right away as we began to talk about budgets, how the budgets are allocated, how they're used, limits of programs in terms of how much gets spent on each business and really what that might mean. So I think being able to talk effortlessly with another accounting and finance professional who's on the interview panel, then yes, I do think it made a big difference in me being selected to do this job.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you first went into accounting and had that as your minor, what was your goal, career path, or ideal position? Where did you see yourself going? And now looking back, did it line up with that where you are now?
Well, this is really interesting. I was not always really good at math.
Really?
Interestingly, yeah. So frankly, until I got into college and said, well, Xavier's not gonna let me have a degree until I really learn mathematics. So it's kind of I guess becoming an accountant might be unusual for somebody that was not naturally inclined toward numbers. But sort of once I basically had a mental block for mathematics, and really getting deep into that story. My mother was a math teacher, so that made for some interesting times as a child. I was a good student always, but mathematics seemed to be the one area that I had the most difficulty with. But so once I got past the mental block, like, okay, I want this college degree. I always wanted to do things in business, not necessarily only accounting. But so it's like, all right, well, let me buckle down and. Oh, okay. Well, and once I finally got it and things began to click just from the basic math point of view, and of course all of the advanced mathematics you have to take to get your college degree, and then so the accounting piece just fell right into it. And then, but one of the points I like to make, so I always like to tell that story to say for people that might still be early in college or high school or whatever and think it's maybe accounting is not a viable path for them. I'd like to tell them, well, yes, it is. It's still a viable path. You just have to, again, get focused. Because if you think about it, and again, my good friend who told me that you got to get a lot faster at this, he used to use a term. He would say, well, it's not rocket science, it's just algebra. It's not rocket science, it's just algebra. So it's not that difficult. There's a system to it, there's a logic to it. And that really, accounting is not so much about the calculations if you think about it. It really is the logic as to really what's behind it. The numbers are just the final representation. You really have to understand what happened before you can even express that in numbers. So don't let the mathematical piece stop you from it, because the theory behind it. Exactly. Yeah. And then again, certainly when you get into some of the more advanced type things you'll need to do, yes, a lot of advanced mathematics, but again, I always tell people, don't let it stop you. I'm probably your best example of somebody that started out not mathematically inclined. So again, that builds your confidence as well. It's like, well, if I can accomplish that, I can do the CPA test, I could do whatever. Exactly. Yeah.
So you referred to your friend a couple of times, your mother, and then your sister was an accounting major?
Yes.
So do you still keep in touch with your friend? Would you consider him a mentor at the time or even now?
Yeah, contemporary and mentor, because again, mentor in the sense that he completed the exam before me, so he could give me a lot of pointers about it. And then I think it's also important. So there were other people that I knew about, even if I didn't know them directly, who were kind of maybe inspirations. At the time, the chief administrative officer for the city of New Orleans was a guy. Again, I didn't know him. A black man. He was the first black chief administrative officer. for the city of New Orleans. So of course you would read about him, you'd see him on TV, and I'm like, that guy's really sharp, you know, and so you'd watch him.
Just having that representation out there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, if he did it, I could do it. And then again, my friend that I talk about, there was another guy who was kind of known around New Orleans who just happened to be a family friend of his. So I met him years later, but you know, my friend Eric, he would always say, well, I can't remember the guy's name now. He said that was an inspiration to him as well, and kind of made him think that, well, maybe accounting is something that I want to do as a profession. Yeah.
Alrighty. So you probably read a lot of statistics on blacks being, or African Americans being underrepresented in the profession. What are your thoughts about that? What do you think we can do as CPA right now, having gone through that past exam, having a credential, or just industry-wide? What can we do to help increase the pass rates?
Right. Well, I think things like this, just being able to share your own experience, tips, and provide encouragement to the younger generation or the next generation coming, and be able to show them. Again, I had a lot more contemporaries, most of them direct mentors.
Okay. Yes.
But some people might need a little more direct mentorship. So I think having traveled that path, and then, you know, again, I mentioned Xavier University, my alma mater, as being one of the institution that really created the greatest number of black CPAs, or trained the greatest number of black CPAs in the state of Louisiana. I think having that kind of history and letting people know about that, letting them know there are resources, that's a very good. So we're talking about mentors, really. I guess my accounting instructors at Xavier were probably my biggest mentors. They laid the material out. They taught you. If you needed advice, you had to go to them. Some of them I still stay in touch with sporadically.
Were they CPAs themselves?
Oh yeah, yes. Yep. And they taught, and they also practiced.
Okay.
So I think they could really give you that practical experience as to really what it's going to take to be successful in the business. In fact, one of them, you know, to get through, I think it was probably intermediate accounting, you had to do what was called a practice set, which was a full set of books. And again, back then, pretty much everything was done manually. Right. So you had to do a whole, say, a month's worth of cash receipts and create that journal. You had to do the accounts payable accruals and create those journals. You had to tie it all into a general ledger and produce the statements. So in trying to work through that, I guess older students of mine, I say, well, you know, maybe they'll give you check figures, like, okay, well, your cash receipts journal should total up to this. Well, I think our favorite instructor was just really good, Mr. Clifford Wright. So, how you doing, Mr. Wright?
Hello.
We still stay in touch. You know, he'd say, well, you know, in real life, you don't get check figures. Oh. So, you have to get through it. And he said, I fully expect that some of you will come with different numbers. And he said, but there's typically going to be a reason. And if I can see how you got to it, then I can advise maybe where you went wrong.
Right.
But in real life, you're not going to get check figures. We're training you for the real world here, so you're not going to get check figures here. You just have to work through it, look at the transactions. We've been through it.
One of the harder classes, it sounds like.
Oh, it was. It absolutely was. But again, it's all part of your preparation.
Gotcha. Okay, so as we wrap up this interview, this next to last question, what does having CPA behind your name mean to you, Mr. Henry Charlot, CPA, Certified Public Accountant, at your assistance?
I think it means that there's a standard of excellence. There's a standard of accomplishment. And it says something about the way you will approach problems and solve problems in life and in your career. So those three letters say a whole lot. I think they are well recognized, certainly in business and even outside of business, as somebody that's reached a certain professional standard, and that you can expect a level of high level of professionalism from that person that has that designation. So it'll serve anybody well, regardless of what you do. whether you stay in accounting your full career, whether you do other things in business. I've done a lot of things in economic development, and again, I still use the skills that I picked up. I use them daily now.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we wrap up. One last question. Is there anything you would like to share with the audience of graduates coming out of school right now, mid-level professionals, or people on the end of their career but said, I never finished pursuing a CPA exam, or you know what, I want to go for this. It's always been in the back of my mind.
I'd say go for it. It's never too late. It's never too late. Again, I think if that really is your desire, regardless of where you are in your career, go ahead on and finish it, and you will not be disappointed. You will find it's going to add another whole dimension to what you're able to do, both on the job and in life.
Great. All right. Well, I want to say thank you, Mr. Henry Charlot, for taking time out to share your experience on the CPA exam.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So tune in next time.